Great. So we're really happy to see all of you and excited for this interest. Let me start sharing my screen and we'll get going here. All right. Can everyone see this? I'll look for some head nods. Great. All right. So here's just to orient us what we're going to be going over today. We'll start with just a high-level overview of what the Environmental Frontiers Initiative is, and specifically EFCampus, which is why you're all here today. We'll have guests from and partners from Facilities Services talk a little bit more broadly about the University of Chicago sustainability planning efforts and the ways in which they work with EFCampus projects and with students. We're also lucky to have one of our current EFCampus research assistants with us to share a bit about his experience. He's been working on EFCampus since last summer, so I thought it would be useful for you to hear from a peer. And then we'll get into the kind of mechanics and nitty gritty of what summer 2021 will look like and what you can expect. And then most importantly, we're really here to answer your questions. So please do feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go, but there will be dedicated time at the end where you can raise your hand and ask a question to any of us here live. And you're going to meet all of us momentarily as several of the Environmental Frontiers partners are presenting, but just worth noting that, you know, this initiative really is a collaborative one that brings together faculty and university staff from Facilities Services, as well as students. So there's a really eclectic mix of folks you're going to hear from today. So just to start at the very beginning, and in a moment, I'll invite the faculty leads of Environmental Frontiers, Professors Elizabeth Moyer and Sabina Sheikh, to say a few words. But at a very high level, there's kind of two elements here, both of which are housed in the Mansueto Institute for Urban Innovation. So the first is in the Environmental Frontiers Initiative for us, which is really about advancing both the theory and practice of sustainable urban development. And so what the initiative does is it creates a variety of training and educational opportunities for students aimed at driving towards both a scientific and practical understanding of advancing sustainability in a rapidly urbanizing world. But the piece, this kind of subset of environmental frontiers that we're talking about today, and for which we are looking for research assistance, is EFCampus. And so that is, again, a campus-based component, sort of using campus as a bit of a case study to generate an understanding of best practices and lessons learned around sustainability management and sustainability research that can be transferred to broader environments beyond just, you know, what we're doing here on campus. And it's a collection of different research projects that does endeavor to tie into the university's larger sustainability goals. And that's really kind of the umbrella and the organizing principle of how the projects are selected and conceived of. And again, what we think is really unique about this is that it is this kind of special intersection of students and faculty and staff all working towards shared sustainability goals, which isn't really, doesn't happen too frequently, and is something that we see as truly valuable for generating the best evidence that we can in support of various sustainability interventions, and also having a quantitative measure of the impact that those interventions might be able to have on campus in terms of things like reduced consumption and reduced waste, but also, kind of better marshaling of resources in a variety of ways, and the design of those resources. Liz and Sabina, would love for both of you to chime in with your perspective about EFCampus.
Hi, I'm Liz Moyer. I'm faculty in geophysical sciences, and I got involved in this effort, sort of helping actually put it together a couple years ago, because we really felt that there needed to be an outlet for students who were interested in sort of what we broadly call sustainability at a university. This was before Mansueto really got started up. So we had really very little at the time that was focused on sort of urban stuff or buildings at all. We don't have an engineering program. So there were a lot of students who were interested in these broader sustainability issues, but they didn't have classes, they didn't have a peer group, there was hardly any research for them. And they were kind of at a loss of how to get involved in a meaningful way. And we really felt like, what students needed the most was a chance to learn the practical aspects of advancing in goals to reduce energy or to reduce waste, rather than, the activist effort where you say we should reduce energy. And then it's a practical part, which is like, okay, well then how do we reduce energy? Like, what is it that we do? And I taught an energy technology class for a long time. I'll probably teach it again next year. And part of that class's goal also was to give people a boot camp in the things they need to know if they want to work in this space, especially because, people don't have engineering backgrounds here. And even engineers are often trained in very specific sort of sub-subjects rather than getting a big overview. And so our goal with this program was to find a way for University of Chicago students to work meaningfully on real world issues, where they're helping advance actual decision making. So they learn the ins and outs of that. They learn how to really make a difference in a real world context. And in turn, the university gets the benefit of students' labor and smarts and interest. And we wanted to see if there was a place where students could make a real contribution. And it turns out that there is plenty of stuff to do that's big and meaningful and valuable, and yet of a scale that students can attack it, even relatively untrained students. So it's not just, we're not talking about this program as being an educational program for students. We're talking about it as an opportunity for students to do something that is valuable for the institution and educational for them. So we had run a couple summers worth of programs where students have done, really important and useful things in quantifying energy use, in mapping out which buildings are using more energy than they should and why, and working on tools and techniques to help our facilities department reduce energy use, which obviously is in everybody's best interest. And it's challenging under COVID. We don't know that we can have an in-person summer program, but we ran a remote summer program last summer, and it was great. It produced sort of actionable things that we're carrying forward with interaction with the National Renewable Energy Lab to make tools for lab decision making to reduce energy use. So I am very confident that we'll continue to find projects and roles for students that produce real world impacts, and that this program is a win-win situation for everybody, for students with an interest in sustainability and for an institution that wants to be more sustainable but needs more help. So you'll get to talk to lots of people today who will talk to you about serving those goals.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sadina Shek. I'm director of the program on global environment. The main thing that we do there is run the environmental and urban studies major and minor. So some of you are probably in our program or taking courses in our program. And I think Liz gave the broad overview, and I've been working with Liz on this and different iterations of this for, I guess, 5 years now. And so we're really happy to be at this place with Environmental Frontiers with a lot of support from Diana and the Mansueto Institute. And I think that, Liz kind of gave you the overview, and Diana told you a bit more about EFCampus. Really what we want to do is support students' interest in campus sustainability. We know we're very aware that that exists, and also to support your advocacy through research opportunities. And so I think those research opportunities benefit everybody. They benefit the researchers as well as the faculty who are working with you, and our facilities team, who you'll hear from soon as well. And it gives, I think it gives us all, both students, staff, and faculty, an opportunity to engage in campus sustainability, right? To be a part of it and to influence it, and to contribute the research that's really needed to move forward on some of the plans that have been set out. And so I think that in addition to the projects Liz talked about, we have been working on supporting the facility's water conservation plan, or the university's water conservation plan. And we've had a couple students working on that. since last summer, and that'll continue this summer as well next fall. And we may have a couple other projects as well, including something with the campus landscape and land use and trees. So we're really excited to have a new team on board for the summer coming up.
Great. Thank you, Liz and Sabina. I'm excited now to turn it over to our partners from Facilities Services, Sarah Copenhagen and Adam D'Ambrosio. Please take it away.
Thank you, Diana. Hi, I'm Sarah Copenhagen, and I work within the Office of Sustainability, which sits within Facilities Services. And so I have been working on areas related to campus sustainability for 6 years now. And I support facility services, but I also support all of campus. So students, faculty, and staff, I support and collaborate with on a multitude of projects. So just to give you a big picture role of the role of facility services within the organization, the facility services team supports the university's mission through efforts to build, enhance, and maintain the university's built environment. So this means that we plan out the campus environment to meet educational and research requirements. We also complete construction and landscaping projects. We operate and maintain the whole campus and all of its buildings while focusing on environmental and financial stewardship. So to that note, one of my responsibilities at the university is to manage our sustainability plan, which you see the cover of on the slide here. In order to get to that plan, you can go to sustainability.uchicago.edu and then go to our reporting tab, and you'll be able to access this report as well as many other sustainability reports. So I manage projects within 9 areas of the sustainability plan shown on the screen. And then I'm also responsible for the university's sustainability reporting. And so if you go to the reporting tab, you'll see different types of reporting that we have, including our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So there are certain areas of focus that we're currently focused on within the sustainability plan, because we can't work on everything all at once all the time, although we'd like to. So I'm just going to outline a few areas of focus, and then feel free to go to the website, and I encourage you to read through the reports there, including this one. So first area, climate change and energy, has to do with our greenhouse gas emissions. We have a goal to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. And so in that area, there's a focus on that and our sustainability reporting and keeping our greenhouse gas emissions inventory up to date and reported on in a transparent manner. And that leads to area 2, high performance buildings, because that area is very important to area 1, because we know that our campus emissions contribute 70% are from our campus buildings, natural gas and electricity usage. So a big part of our focus is working on our buildings to make them more efficient, make sure they're operating as designed, and to construct them in a sustainable manner in the first place. So that very much ties into our climate change and energy area. Another area of focus is the waste reduction component. We are looking to divert more waste so that we have less waste going to landfills and more going to recycling and composting of the greens on campus and things like that, like the landscape waste. Also, we have a large push right now for a water conservation goal. We're currently working on a water conservation plan to determine how we will be able to meet our water consumption reduction goals. So that's something that's very important to us. We have quantified our usage, and now we're working on a plan to determine how we can reduce that. And of course, area 9, last but not least, is building awareness and partnerships. And a big part of that is Environmental Frontiers Campus and working with all of you to help us with these goals. So we like to work on projects that you can participate in with us and that are in alignment with these 9 areas of our plan. And with that, I just want to say thank you all so much for coming. It's very exciting to see so many of you on this call, and I'm very energized by the fact that you're all interested in this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam D'Ambrosio, who's a colleague I work with. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Hi, I'm Adam D'Ambrosio. I'm the Senior Director of Energy Services and Sustainability. I'm on the facility service staff with Sarah. We work closely together on all things sustainability. My focus within that plan is with energy and water, and so I'm responsible for procuring energy and conserving energy on campus. It's been a great partnership with EFCampus over the last year. We've created projects with EFCampus that address real energy and sustainability challenges we face in facility services while working towards the sustainability goals that Sarah just described. The work completed by the research assistants has made a real impact on the university operations and sustainability goals. And I just want to touch on the 3 projects and what we in the facility services staff, got out of it. It was really beneficial to us. So the laboratory buildings team, they provided benchmarking analysis, they researched best practices and created tools that will help us reduce energy consumption in lab buildings. And lab buildings are our most energy intensive buildings on campus. If you make a big impact in labs, you've made a big impact on the campus. In particular, one of the items was an analysis of best practices in laboratory ventilation from peer institutions, and that's incredibly useful to us in facility services in trying to improve the efficiency of our buildings. It's great to see what other universities are doing. It helps us in a lot of ways. And as Professor Moyer mentioned, the current team is developing a tool which will help guide decisions regarding the design of laboratory project build-outs and equipment selection. And it's an exciting project. We're working with some external groups, as mentioned. It's going to be really helpful in the future. So again, these projects help solve real problems and help move us towards our goals. The LEED buildings team compared LEED building energy performance to LEED and non-LEED certified buildings. And what we found with that, the output of that group's report, it really helped us and it informed our future sustainability energy efficiency practices for future major projects. And what it's really pushing us to do is go beyond our current LEED silver requirement for large projects and really look at additional items that will help us get more energy efficient buildings. And then I guess finally, the water efficiency assessment team, they did some great benchmarking analysis, and it's a work in progress. They're working with us right now to help us develop a water conservation plan. Again, that Sarah mentioned that, it's not just a plan, it's not an idea, it's something that we intend to implement at the university. So you're helping create the plan that we will implement. So again, I just want to highlight that all these projects, research assistants really help us solve problems and they contribute towards our goals. And we get, it's a great benefit for us. I really enjoy the program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah and Adam. And moving on, excited to again hear now from one of our current undergraduate research assistants, Shopnavo Biswas, who is a 3rd year math, economics, and physics major. So Shop started, as Adam mentioned, on the lab energy use team last summer. And has continued on with us during the academic year. And so he was on a team of 3 students who did this initial kind of lab benchmarking and energy analysis and is now working to develop a tool to help PIs in the design and kind of launch of their labs in a more sustainable and energy efficient model. So Shop, if you want to take it away, you can tell me when you want me to turn slides.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Diana. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of what our team was focusing on with lab energy use. So as Adam briefly mentioned, there's 10 total lab buildings on campus which use a disproportionately high amounts of energy. And lab buildings are really energy intensive for a variety of reasons, of which probably the biggest one is their high ventilation requirements, because there's experiments going on and there's chemicals that need to be extracted from the air. If you've worked in labs, you've worked with fume hoods, and those in fact use a crazy high amount of energy because of the energy requirements of filtering the air. Other just miscellaneous equipment in labs, specifically cold storage, are also contribute greatly to labs total energy use. If you go next slide. I think it would be most valuable for me to talk about what last summer looked like, so you can get a sense of what this summer might look like. You would probably not be working on the same projects, but just for a sense of how this summer would be structured. So the first week and a half was just general onboarding. We were given a model, a practice assignment to complete just to get us familiar with working with energy data and building data. From there, we sort of got into the meat of what we were trying to accomplish during the summer. Adam mentioned that benchmarking tool that we did comparing UChicago energy use to labs around the country. There were a few steps that went into that. One of them was like finding data about what energy other labs are using and figuring out which data sources we could draw on to provide comparisons to UChicago. After we got our data sources, we put them together into a model where we figured out which inputs we needed to create like an estimated or a predicted energy use from where we could compare UChicago buildings to their predicted energy use to see which ones are over or underperforming. Based on that benchmarking, we could see which buildings are underperforming, as I mentioned, and from there, we wanted to investigate specific energy conservation measures that we could implement in those buildings to see if we could bring those more in line with peers around the country. A few areas of particular interest for us were fume hoods, ventilation rates, and cold storage. So over the summer, we were researching like peer best practices with regards to those three and providing the team with like visualizations of here's where Chicago's at, here's where other universities are at, here are what steps we could maybe take to get more in line with those. And by the end of the summer, we handed over our key deliverables, which included a like long form report where we just got into the super nitty gritties of like our recommendations, what people are doing at like other universities. We also created like a few different presentations. One was like the final presentation that we presented at the end of the 12th week. And then our last week was spent creating and sort of like just refining whatever materials we had created over the course of the summer. At the bottom, I have our presentation timeline, and I put this in just to illustrate that during near the beginning of the summer, like over the first half, we had presentations fairly regularly as none of us had really worked with like energy or building data before. And so it was really helpful to have those like periodic check-ins. And then like by week 6, we had a better sense of what we were doing, and we didn't need that sort of like direct weekly supervision anymore. And so we had like one presentation at the end of week 10 and then culminated in our final presentation. You can go next slide. I wanted to talk about like what sorts of outputs you might be producing and like what sorts of outputs might be helpful. The one on the top left, I think, is just an interesting like overview of lab energy use on campus. These are all taken from the website that we put together, like a 5-slide like deck, just summarizing our outputs. So the graph on the top left is just like which labs use the most energy. I didn't know this before I started, so this was super interesting for me. The bottom left is a snapshot from our final report. So as I mentioned, a big part of our analysis was looking at what people at other universities are doing. And so in our report, we sort of got really deep into like energy conservation measures at other universities to provide context for facilities to build off of. The bottom right is taken from analysis we were doing for the benchmarking. It's specifically looking at the relationship between how much of a building is devoted to lab area and its energy use intensity. And as expected, as a building has more lab area in it, its energy use intensity goes up. What is interesting is that there's a different relationship. That relationship changes depending on what sort of like subject that lab area is devoted to. So there's chemistry, biology, and physics here, and those all have a different relationship. And that's really useful for anyone trying to create a benchmarking model to figure out what like the expected energy usage of a lab building is. This tells us that it depends in different ways on how much of that lab is devoted to bio, chem, or physics. The next slide. So at a high level, I feel like in like math classes, there's often like very like specialized data sets that are like constructed in a way for you to learn something specific. But what I learned was that like real world data is very much not like that. It's often not like tailor-made for you to work with easily. And so learning how to work with real world data was a very useful skill. As you can probably tell, there's several different stakeholders. And so working with people like across the university who are all interested in reducing energy, but have slightly different needs and interests, I think was like a good exercise in how to align people from different teams into like a common vision. Also like presentation skills, like just creating slides, how to talk over slides, how to like not read off slides, but like provide something new while you're talking over slides, I think was really useful for me to learn and something I really hadn't thought about that much before. And we had to, this is, I think the last bullet point here is sort of COVID specific because we were sort of on our own, just like working by ourselves, but like holding each other accountable, but also like helping each other out where we needed to. I think like that aspect of teamwork was really valuable. Adam mentioned some of these things on the right, just like how work from the summer was actually being implemented. So I won't go through those. And here at the bottom, I just wanted to say like I hadn't really like done environmental research or like environmental activism before EFCampus, like in any way. I was just like interested in it, and like I guess I like cared about being someone who's like part of the university's efforts to reduce its total energy use. So I just want to say like you guys like really should not feel discouraged from applying, even if you're not like environmental studies major or if you don't have direct experience. I think like the operating principle behind EFCampus is that if you take students who are interested and passionate about reducing energy use around campus, they can make something really valuable and effective happen. And I think like if you're interested in reducing energy around campus, like you should definitely apply. And yeah, that's all I got. At the end, I'm sure we're gonna have questions. And you can feel free to ask me anything about like work I've done or just like literally anything. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Shop. Okay, great. I'm going to talk a little bit more again at this point, just about the mechanics of the position. I just got a question in the chat that is a good one, and so I'm going to quickly speak to it. The question was basically, is EFCampus offering opportunities through the college's Summer Institute in social research methods? The question is yes, and worth noting the distinction between these two opportunities. So the way we've structured it is that at SISRM, the Summer Institute, some students in SISRM will be assigned to an EFCampus project as part of that Summer Institute experience. So that is one avenue for getting involved in EFCampus at this point. It's the first time we're doing it, but seemed like a valuable partnership. And then in addition, what we're focusing on today are full-time research assistant roles that will be offered for the full 10 weeks. So there will be kind of one work stream, if you will, of projects through SISRM, and then there will be another work stream of student projects that's full-time, which is what we're talking about now. And if you have more questions about that at the end, I'm happy to clarify further. But so the structure of this is, as Shop really did a beautiful job of walking you through, these are full-time jobs. In some ways, at this point, we're anticipating they will still be done remotely, though hopefully there might be increased opportunity for some in-person interactions, but I think you could plan on mostly being remote. And in a lot of ways, these are like your undergraduate research assistants, but we did, I think, treat the teams of undergraduates in some ways as like staff workers. They were embedded, they were working in lockstep with facilities, with Sarah and Adam and their teams. And so we kind of treated, I think, the groups of students in that way. These are paid. It's a $5,000 stipend. Worth noting that these might actually end up being hourly roles, but they will be compensated at such a rate that it would be equivalent to $5,000 for the 10 weeks. And these are team-based projects, right? So we're anticipating that this summer we would have teams of 2 or 3 students, sort of depending on the applicant pool. And they are projects that are sponsored by facilities, but really student-driven and student created. And then the other important thing that I don't think we've touched upon yet is the graduate student mentor. That is, I think, also a really important fixture of how these projects are structured. So unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us today, but we currently have a Booth student who is leading SHOP and the other students who are working during this academic year. And her interest is really in kind of sustainable business operations and also sustainability from a corporate social responsibility standpoint. But I think she's been really critical in ensuring that all, as you're seeing, there's all these different kind of cooks in the kitchen. There's a variety of different stakeholders who are invested in this project work and this research and outputs. And she's been a real center of gravity for making sure everyone's communicating, everybody has the information they need when they, at various different important junctures. And also that the students are kind of having a cadence and a rhythm and a coordinated project plan that they're moving down, and we're all rowing in the same direction. Last summer, we had a Harris student playing that similar role. So that's certainly something we have yet to fill it, but we plan to have a graduate student being that kind of like central resource for students as well as the different EF stakeholders again this summer. And applications for these full-time RA positions are due on March 20th. It's via the college's Center for Research and Fellowships. And the application is essentially a brief statement of interest, your CV, and then an unofficial transcript. Those are the kind of 3 components. Again, SHOP did a great preview of last summer. We're expecting to have a very similar kind of schedule and programmatic structure this summer. But just worth mentioning, right, those first couple of weeks is really having kind of an onboarding process, getting you oriented. And also what we did was having a mini task to kind of get you used to working with this kind of data and also the kind of research questions that the projects entail. And then we make sure that all the students get training from facilities as needed, based on the project demands. And then really you're kind of off to the races from there, getting into the meat and potatoes and starting to do, quantitative analysis and various different types of comparative or best practices research. But we do set up a schedule so that you're meeting with, either folks from facilities who are relevant to the project or faculty on a kind of predictable schedule, so that you're getting feedback and kind of iterative guidance as you need along the way. And then we did also bake in several touch points to have more formal reviews where students were presenting kind of interim deliverables or progress on their various different findings, so that again, if they needed to make adjustments or course correct, there was opportunity to do that with feedback from faculty and staff prior to the kind of endpoint and the final deliverables being due. And we're also, just to be fully transparent, we're still in the kind of throes of identifying exactly what this summer's project or projects will be. That's in part because the work that RAs are doing now is live and it's still unfolding. And so I think there's an opportunity that students coming in this summer will build upon what has already been done, particularly around lab performance and increased kind of resources and tools for PIs, as well as the water conservation planning project as well, but we may be starting a new project specifically related to campus trees and what opportunities exist to kind of make more strategic decisions about the constellation of different types of tree species and how those can better tie into the university's sustainability plans and goals that Sarah had gone over earlier. So this is, again, the projects that we have done, and I think what we anticipate doing this summer will be in this family and kind of in this template. So that is all for the formal presentation, and so I think we've got a good amount of time to do Q&A. If you do have a question for a specific person, as you can see, there's several of us here, please feel free to direct it to us, or you can pose general questions to the group as well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so I can see you all. And I think we did get another question in the chat that I can, many questions coming in the chat, I think to me, but I'll try to speak to them. So one question is, for getting involved through SISRM, would you have needed to apply separately through them? The answer to that is yes. Unfortunately, the SISRM applications were due, I think, a couple weeks ago at this point, and those are closed and they're already going through their applicant review process. So yes, that was a separate application. Another question, to what extent are technical skills expected prior to the application? Good question.
Do you want me to answer
Yeah,
that?
go for it.
So, it's supposed to be, it's hard to do any of this work without quantitative analysis. We're trying to make changes that have to be quantified, but there are different kinds of skills that are required. And the best teams have different types of people doing different things. If we get people coming in who have particular skills, we sometimes can craft a project for them. So if somebody comes in and says, I am an awesome person who studies institutional organization and management, but I, can't work a spreadsheet to save my life, but I know how org structures work, was like, okay, great, let's pair you with someone else and have you think about, programmatic implementation of incentives changes, right? There's things that different people are good at. If someone comes in and says, I don't know anything about energy, but I'm amazing at, programming and graphics, we're like, great, let's help make an energy dashboard, and we'll pair you with somebody who's good at the who can help you with the input. So there's different ways that people can contribute, and we actually try to craft projects to match the skill sets of the people who apply.
Great. Students should feel free to jump in if you have questions.
Just ask. I don't think you need to put it in chat. Just ask something. And presumably you're here because you have questions about the program, so go ahead. I don't know. Someone asked, what do summer RAs go on to do in later summers? We've had a couple people who actually continued with the program for a few years. So there have been people who stayed on. We've had seniors before who are going directly on to their corporate jobs afterwards. So it's a mix. We've had one student did EFCampus and then evolved into a member of my research group doing different kinds of actual academic research, just because it was a natural fit. So I think people have done different things. We tend to not want people to do it just us, or we certainly hope that some people will continue for more than a summer, because you spend a lot of time coming up the learning curve. So it's kind of silly to spend a month and a half getting really useful and then leave after, 10 weeks. But, we kept a few of our students from last summer stayed on. So that's kind of a good model for us.
I think just to add to that, as Liz said, we did for like the water project, we were able to keep some of our students on, but then bring in new students as well. And then those who are no longer involved in the project have still sort of stayed in touch a bit to see how their work could be advanced. And I think also it gives students good experience then for the following summer to be able to say, I've worked with data, I understand how building energy works now, and they can go and maybe find other positions too outside the university, given the skills that they've.
So again, question about remote work versus in-person. Yeah, I mean, this is the $1 million question, I think, for all of us. The staff and faculty were talking about this before we launched. I wouldn't, I mean, Liz and Sabina, feel free to jump in. I hesitate to hazard a guess about what will be feasible for in-person elements because it is so actively being explored and assessed at the moment. And given that the summer quarter is June, July, August, like, I think primarily it will be remote, but if the opportunity presents itself, we do have office space where RAs could gather, could spend some time working if they needed to. So those things are there, and if it's safe and the university permits such activities, we would endeavor to make it available to students. Liz and Sabina, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. We would have to just ensure that it was allowed to have by the university, and potentially, if there is a project related to trees, we'd want to be outside and looking around campus and doing some documentation. So there is probably greater potential for the outdoor activities if those exist, but we still have to adhere to whatever the university allows us to do.
Just that it managed to work this summer, even though people were remote. They had their working groups. It was both the projects were quite successful. So nobody disappeared. All the students stayed engaged. They produced good work that produced sort of actionable decisions and continued onwards. So it was surprisingly successful, even though people were stuck at home.
Right. And Shop, potentially you could speak a bit to this, but I think some of the mechanisms we used, I think working remotely on a project of this nature is a little different than doing coursework remote, right? So I think some of the tactics that the student teams used were like every morning they had 15 minutes of a Zoom together just to kind of like huddle and have a moment of interaction, and then on many days they would go off and do their analysis independently, but they had a Slack channel where they were talking to each other and kind of troubleshooting as they went, and would again have anticipated times when they would all come together to review work, to kind of collaborate and share information. Shop, I don't know if there's other aspects of that you found to be effective in terms of your remote work structure with the team.
I think you touched on most of the like formal meetings and structures that we had in place. I just think it was really good for us to we spent a lot of time planning out like what we were going to do and making sure that we were all aligned on, and we all knew what everyone on the team was working on. And I think that was a really valuable skill to learn, just in terms of how to complete a long-term project.
And I think we would definitely encourage the whole group, the big group, to engage and have social activities, even if it's virtual, and we can help to support that however we can.
One of our goals with this was to structure it, not so much like your class, but like the kind of things you do in the working world. You are in groups, you have to work in groups, you have deliverables, you have to report up to somebody. They have to be trustable analyses that help with decisions. So this is quite similar to what you would do if you were like a deputy sustainability office somewhere. Someone would say, go figure out, what our recycling policy is and should it change, and please give me a report in 6 weeks. Like that would be your job. And so we, it was structured more or less like a job would be, and people, rose to that occasion, which was nice.
I also think it's really valuable to learn to work remotely, because COVID or not, that's going to be a workplace skill that's needed. So every company I've ever worked for before being at the university, we were working with people from all over the world. So we did remote work on a regular basis. And so COVID or not, I think there's still going to be a lot of remote work, like there always has been, and maybe even more now. So I do think it's really valuable to learn how to do that.
A Slack channel set up, right? So, the students make some sort of communication mechanism. Slack is really good. You can make sub channels and threads for different projects or parts of the project. So, that's how we're all working right now, right? That's how we get our research done. So you guys can do the same. Someone asked about mentorship. I think, we have grad student help or somebody to provide day-to-day help. And beyond that, it's quite similar. Like people are doing their projects and reporting up, and they get interaction. There's meetings, if someone disappeared, no one is going to be looking for you probably and babysitting you. But there's plenty of opportunity to talk to people in the course of a project. And one of the things that's nice about this project is because you're working so directly with facilities, you're treated kind of as a colleague, and, people will ask questions like, is that analysis trustable? And where do you get that number? And can you redo that graph? Just like in a regular workplace environment. But that's what mentorship really consists of, is people sort of taking the time to help you make your work better and providing sort of formal or informal feedback. So I think there's actually, it's been very, well, Shop can tell me if that's correct or not, but it's been very good for having people, again, have that sort of consistent interaction with a variety of different people, both within the institution and facilities, and with a grad student mentor and, faculty mentors, even though we drop in sort of less frequently, but it's a chance to practice all those different kinds of interactions.
And also to add to that, I agree with you, Liz. And just to add to it, with all the different students I've worked with over the years, I often maintain those relationships with them years after they've left the university, if they want to. So I always say, like, there's no expiration date on it either. So I think this is a really good networking opportunity. And you can maintain those relationships even after graduation if you would like to.
And the students, get to know each other in the group. Presumably, Shop can tell us otherwise, but it seems like the groups worked very well, and the students knew each other and liked each other, and will keep in touch.
Yeah, my team and I from the summer were just talking 2 days ago, so can definitely confirm.
I was going to add to that my sense from watching the student teams last summer was that there was also a bit of peer-to-peer mentorship, in that different students, as Sabina and Liz mentioned earlier, a goal of the selection process from kind of a programmatic standpoint is to have students who have different areas of expertise that harmonize together. And I think we saw that play out really effectively last summer, in that students who had different strengths were able to sort of guide their team members, towards being positioned for mutual success, but each kind of offering their own unique areas of expertise or experience that they had. And that seemed to happen pretty regularly on the teams. So we'll hope for that again, because it seemed like positive for all. Other things students want to know, we're happy to let folks go a few minutes early since we're almost at time, but would also, just for our kind of knowledge, would welcome students to say who you are, what your major is, and maybe why you're interested in this, just so we can get kind of a broader understanding of your interpretation of this program and opportunity.
And I'm going to drop off if nobody has any more questions, but it's been nice talking to people. Yeah, so thank you so much, Diana, for organizing this.
Perfect. Thank you, Liz.
If nobody has any questions, I can introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Crum. I'm an environmental science major under the GEOS umbrella that Liz is a part of. And sustainability has just always been a huge part of my family and everything that I've always looked personally to try to find more sustainable ways to live my life. And it really interests me, especially in a world that's changing so rapidly, to find ways to incorporate like making sure that we're not further contributing to climate change as everything is changing.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm Chrissy. I'm a third year. I'm majoring in psychology and public policy with a specialization in environmental. And I feel like I have basically the same thing to say. Like, I'm from Montana, so environmental and sustainability issues have always been on my mind and something that I'm passionate about. And I think it's really interesting how this research step of like what's our best plan of action is often skipped over when we talk about sustainability, because people often just say, you need to be more sustainable and then give no plans for how to do that. And so I'm really, really interested with this project.
I wish Professor Moyer had still been here to hear you say that, because it would have, I think, warmed her heart. Because yes, I think that you really hit the nail on the head with a key objective for the initiative. So that's great to know that you kind of like are in alignment with that. Well, please don't hesitate. I guess we can adjourn, but please don't hesitate to email me with questions. My email is dpetty, P-E-T-T-Y, UChicago.edu. And I can triage, with the rest of the members of the Environmental Frontiers effort. But really appreciate you all taking the time. Hope you'll apply. There's Sabina also as well. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining. Thanks,
Thank you.
Diana.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.